A very, very warm welcome to the first ever Climate Finance Catalyst Contest, brought to you by the Climate Safe Lending Network. I'm Naomi Kerbel, Director of Communications here at SEC Newgate. We're a global communications strategic agency. And this evening we'll start with an introduction to the Climate Safe Lending Network, what it is, and what this contest is all about. We'll follow with a panel discussion with some leading lights in the green finance sector, and we're very grateful to them for being here tonight. And then we'll move into the awards themselves. And afterwards, we'll move back upstairs for networking so you can continue those conversations and share some ideas. First, little housekeeping: to the left-hand side is the exit, where you came in, and on the ground floor, where you arrived, are the loos. Absolutely vital. If you do need to top up, there are a few drinks on the side there. And there are going to be some drinks and canapes afterwards, so please help yourselves to those. And as this is a global contest, we are delighted to also welcome virtual attendees this evening from far and wide. Thank you very much for coming. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Aaron Morehouse and James Vaccaro from the Climate Safe Lending Network, who are the architects of this contest.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi, and hello, everyone. Wonderful to see. What a crowd tonight. Amazing group of folks that are here, and really excited to have this evening this Climate Finance Catalyst Contest Awards. I'm Aaron Morehouse. I'm the Executive Director for the Climate Safe Lending Network, and if you're not familiar with us, we are an international multi-stakeholder collaborative dedicated to accelerating the decarbonization of the banking sector. We're all about bringing together senior leaders and change makers in banking and green finance to find the solutions that will secure a climate safe world. And that's exactly what tonight and the Climate Finance Catalyst Contest is all about. James?
Hi everybody, I'm James Vaccaro. I'm Chief Catalyst of the Climate Safe Lending Network. Why catalyst and why a catalyst contest? I've always wanted to be a catalyst. It's great because it accelerates reactions and in theory doesn't get used up itself. And that's what I enjoy doing. And that's hopefully what all of the entries and the innovators and the entrepreneurs and the people who submitted ideas also want to be. How can they make a positive input into the transition by working with and hopefully being scaled up by the power of financial institutions, lenders and banks. I'm going to slightly improv, mostly because part of innovation is about improvising and exploring, and the fact that I can no longer read anymore. So I'm kind of going off script in a natural way. What I wanted to say though about banks is that banks are really close to clients in the real economy. They are channeling capital for development, and that's helping to shape the economy of our future every single day. And as such, it is critical. It's such a leverage point in terms of being able to guide us towards transition. And Emma asked me today, so what was the impulse for this kind of contest? And I think that in terms of our work and the network, and many of you as well, there's only so much time that we can keep on talking about the problems. It's a bit like the British weather. Everyone likes to talk about it, but no one's doing anything about it. So rather than focus just on the problems, where are the solutions? Where are the ideas? And we talked about where are we going to get the ideas from. Should it just be from people in banks? We know a lot of innovators in banks. We know a lot of very creative people doing some amazing work. But if we're really going to scale things out, let's blow this completely open. We want the ideas to come from everywhere and anywhere. And we were blown away by the diversity, the depth, the quality of entries from people, most of whom, the majority of whom, not working within banks, but maybe close to, having insights, which hopefully will inspire, and in the chemistry, which we hope as the network to be able to create a space for and being able to bring these ideas into action that is going to be able to make things flourish. We also wanted to give a little bit of direction for where the ideas were going to come from. And we selected 3 categories, 3 challenges. We called them Go Faster, How can banks help their existing clients to accelerate the changes that they need in the transition of their business models, in their products, in everything that they do, in their supply chains, to meet the needs of transition? Go further. What are the new solutions to be able to help us to be able to finance new technologies, new approaches, to the stuff which is really in that kind of not here, but we need to make it really soon? And go fairer. How do we really integrate social justice in the broadest sense of that term? We've just done a big report on banking on climate justice, and really thinking about innovation which can fully integrate that aspect into the work, that we don't get blinkered on just carbon. And what we saw was over 100 submissions and some themes which were coming in and through from the entries. We saw entries which were increasing collaboration between different parties. It's not just us as a multi-stakeholder network, it's constellations of business, finance, governmental, other stakeholders being able to work in different patterns of relationship, seamlessly connecting stakeholders together to support sustainability goals. We saw technology integration, so using technology to streamline processes, reduce transaction costs, empower sustainable choices. We saw a shift in the focus from that narrow focus on climate mitigation to this broader, more holistic integration of nature, of social justice, resilience, and communities. We saw financial incentives. So how can we create financial mechanisms to keep nudging to promote sustainable practices and that can flow right the way through supply chains? And data transparency. So how do we provide user-friendly information to inform decision making? Yes, there's new tools like AI, but it still needs to be interpreted for us to be able to bind into human judgments. So, to help follow along, to be your sommelier for this evening, I would like to invite you to use the QR code to find out, and there is a place online on our website, the Climate Safe Lending Network, that will take you to a page which has got a little bit of information about our finalists tonight. For those joining online, I think we'll be posting a link in the chat for you so that you can navigate. Otherwise, you'll find it on the Climate Safe Lending Network website. I just want to reiterate, though, that we really did get depth and quality. And I know they say that in like the Oscars and things, but like we really, really did. And I want to reiterate that it's not just the finalists being showcased tonight that we're looking to take forward. There were many more entrants which over the coming weeks and months we are going to be wanting to work with. They may not have as broad or universal scalability, but we saw real potential which could really match different lending institutions within our network. So over the coming months, the Climate Safe Lending Network is going to be working with our partners, with lending institutions, to be able to pilot these interventions, to make the connections. And we also invite you and your amazing connections and ideas to be let loose on that too, because we're wanting to, again, just all accept the invitation to be catalysts here tonight. However, it is an awards ceremony. To say a little bit more about the judging process and the awards today, I'm going to hand back to Aaron.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Yeah, so as a multi-stakeholder network, we have such an amazing set of organizations and institutions and banks that participate in many of our programs, whether it's the Banking on Climate Justice initiative that James mentioned, or our Climate Safe Lending Fellowship, which we are just launching our third cohort with, where we worked with the Finance Innovation Lab over the first couple of years with that. So many wonderful folks across the network, and we were thrilled to be inundated with so many entries from across the globe and impressed with the ideas that were proposed. We had a rigorous adjudication process with 21 brilliant minds from across climate finance, making the tough decisions to settle on the finalists and the winners that we'll hear about tonight. So I first want to say a huge thank you to the judging panel. You can see their names here, many of whom are in the audience and online. If you're one of our judges and you're in the audience, could you raise a hand or stand up so we can see how many are here? Wonderful. Give them a round of applause, please. And this global search would not have been possible without our partners, with UNEPFI and the United Nations Environment Program's Finance Initiative, the Global Alliance for Banking on Values, the Green Digital Finance Alliance, direct support from First Abu Dhabi Bank for helping us launch this contest at COP28 in Dubai, and our lead sponsoring partner, the British Business Bank. And I'd like to hand it over to Caroline English, who is here, the Director of Policy and Strategy from the British Business Bank, to tell us a little bit more about why BBB wanted to be involved in this contest. And Naomi, thank you for having that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aaron and Naomi, and good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to make a few comments for the British Business Bank. So I'm Caroline English, and I am a Director of Policy and Strategy at the British Business Bank. And we are, for those of you who haven't come across us before, the UK's Economic Development Bank with a focus on small business. And our mission at the British Business Bank is as follows. It's to drive sustainable growth and prosperity across the UK, and to enable the transition to a net zero economy by supporting access to finance for smaller businesses. So you can hear that a just transition is really core business for us. It's right in the heart of the mission, and it's a real central part of what we think about and what we're doing at the British Business Bank. So we're absolutely thrilled to be a sponsor for this competition, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what the panel have to say about the ideas that have been coming forward. This is not a simple short-term problem that anyone in this room is dealing with. We're all aware of the challenge that's facing banking and the global community more broadly. The British Business Bank thinks about, has a certain vantage point on this problem, as organizations in the room will have different perspectives. The British Business Bank is mostly a wholesale investor, and we have some direct investment that we look at as well in terms of the small businesses we support. So for us, there's a real important role in thinking about how do we back the innovative companies that are looking at the kinds of technological solutions that we need, but also how do we think about greening finance and greening the financial system. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about tonight and hear about the fantastic ideas. We've been trying to come up with some of them ourselves. So I'll be thrilled to hear if there are some ideas that we can discuss further and think about how a state-backed investor like the British Business Bank could think about how we influence the markets that we work in, and the sort of the influence that we have over the businesses we support and the partners we have in the private sector. So I want to say thanks to everyone for hosting us. Thank you for having the British Business Bank as a sponsor. We're absolutely thrilled to hear about the brilliant ideas that will come out of this competition, and pass it back over to Naomi, and hope everyone enjoys the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. And yes, now let's hear about some of those solutions and discuss them a bit further with our esteemed judges. Can I welcome to the stage Emma Harvey-Smith, Chief of Staff, Green Finance Institute, David Carlin, Jaideep Prabhu. I'm going to go through a little bit on what everyone does in a minute, and James Vaccaro, who you've already heard from a little bit. Thank you. And I'm also going to take onto the stage my rather chunky script. And also, I think Michaela might have some questions for me for later. So Michaela, if someone runs to the stage with the computer, that's why we've got some virtual questions coming in. And as a very small person, getting up onto these stools is an absolute bugger. Right, am I allowed to say that? Sure. Emma Harvey-Smith, Chief of Staff at the Green Finance Institute, a pioneering, I'm told, green finance specialist who's championed the green agenda throughout her career. Emma leads the GFI in its work to accelerate global capital towards decarbonising buildings in particular. and my script has disappeared, so that's good. For the next person, hang on. And we have Jaideep, well, why don't I go along as it says it, David Carlin, Head of Climate Risk at UNEP FI. David's work leading UNEP FI's climate risk programs has made an authority for governments, corporates and financial institutions worldwide on climate and sustainability. No pressure, David. And Jaideep Prabhu, Professor at the Judge Business School at the University of Cambridge. Jaideep's research interests are frugal innovation, I can't wait to hear about that, and government regulation of technology, focusing on the public sector as well as firms in developed and emerging economies. And you've already heard who James Vaccaro is, Chief Catalyst of the Climate Safe Lending Network. So Jaideep, can I start with you? What is it, in your opinion, and maybe you can pull in some of the thoughts you had as you were looking through some of the entries that came in, but what is it that makes innovation so difficult for organisations in particular, especially banks? What are the underlying changes that need to be made to make the difference?
Yeah, so first of all, delighted to be here, and I love this idea of looking for solutions rather than just focusing on the problem. And in a sense, that's what innovation is all about. It's identifying important problems and then coming up with a novel solution to those problems. So everybody wants to do innovation, and yet it's hard to do. Not everyone can do it. And the irony is that companies often, or organizations, grow and become successful on the back of some innovation. But as they grow and become successful, they find it harder and harder to innovate and to keep innovating. Mm-hmm. This is partly because they have to introduce processes and structures that slow them down, but also because they have something to protect now. They have, something that they've succeeded in achieving, and then coming up with something new might be at the expense of that, something risky at the expense of a sure thing. And so you see that across companies, particularly large ones. And you see that in banking, because of course they have these issues of, as they grow and become successful, structures and processes slow them down, and there's this kind of risk aversion that sets in. And they're regulated, so there's a compliance mindset on top of all that. So I think that's the challenge for particularly large, successful organizations like banks, for instance.
I want to come back in a moment to frugal innovation and jugaad. But Emma, if I could come to you next. The GFI has been piloting these new approaches in the UK for some years, so you have experience of it. What do you think are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned, and what helps banks to catalyse progress? What helps them to get over this concern around innovation?
So I guess to kind of answer that, I'd start off by saying, why would banks even consider climate finance? And I often talk about it in the 3 R's, which is risk, return and reputation. So I think, I don't need to preach to the converted. We know there's huge risks associated with the transition to net zero and with climate change. And actually banks are facing the risk of stranded assets, as well as all of the regulation that may be coming in. So there's a real need to move fast to avoid any risks. There's return. There is a huge green economy that is coming down the line. It's already here, actually. And the banks and financial institutions have a huge role to play in funding that. And then reputation, moving with the green agenda, moving with the climate agenda can help ensure you maintain your reputation, both with clients and with investors. So on the basis of that, there's 2 areas where we've seen the banks have been able to really move forward, and that's on greening finance and financing green. So greening finance, so managing the risks associated with net zero. Data and disclosures have been really helpful for the banks to understand what risks they're actually sitting on and work out what actions they want to take. We've seen new risk policies come into place. We've seen entire sort of climate risk teams being set up and complete restructurings within the banks. So that's helped to catalyse change. But what we focus on at the GFI, and what we're incredibly passionate about though, is the financing green side. So how do you mobilise capital towards real projects? And the 3 things that we've seen particularly help there. One is financial institutions looking at sectoral transitions. So how you would finance, let's say offshore wind, is completely different to how you would finance a retrofit. So by the banks and the financial institutions looking at sectoral decarbonisation, they can innovate tailored solutions that will support the decarbonisation of that sector. What else will support with that financing green? Well, you've obviously got solutions that are genuinely solving a challenge. So exactly what you were just saying there, you've got to look at a challenge and then innovate a solution to address that. And the last one, ultimately, is these solutions have to generate returns. The banks, financial institutions, do have many stakeholders that they have to support. So helping clients and making a return, that's what's vital. So as an example, green bonds has been the poster child of this market for a long time. They do create returns for the banks, but they channel capital towards green projects as well. So that's why they've been so successful.
And David, to you, in terms of listening to Emma and the things that she's noted are moving quickly, in your research, in your conversations, what do you think is moving quickly or slowly in this area?
So I think that the awareness and appreciation of the scale and scope of climate and the need to take action has moved remarkably rapidly. When we think about where we were in 2017 when the first recommendations of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures came out, to where we were in 2021 when alliances like the Net Zero Banking Alliance were set up. The movement toward seeing this as a mainstream focus of the financial sector and financial system. Just in the last 5 years, we have first stress tests, we have new scenarios, we have new commitments, we have new disclosure frameworks. And so there's a lot of movement on building that infrastructure. And yet I think the challenge that we really face here is ultimately each ton of carbon emitted, each molecule really of CO2 that goes into the atmosphere is making this problem worse. And so we are well past our exit and we're really needing to do a U-turn. And what we keep doing is driving on at about the same speed, and it's just going to make the comeback even longer. And so one of the things I think we have to realize, which is a unique thing, and apologies to anyone who has heard me in the last couple of days, because I've made this point before about what this really implies, is we have to become comfortable not having all the information. And this is endemic to the financial sector, uncertainty. It's why we have interest rates above inflation on our loans. It's why we invest in certain products and not others. It's why we underwrite and we have premia. It's because we don't have all the answers. And yet in this space, there is this kind of watchful waiting, and it may not be watchful waiting on the climate, it may be on the data. It may be, well, we don't have the information. We don't know how government is gonna act. And it's recognizing that your actions are necessary. They may not be sufficient alone, but they are absolutely critical. And I think one of the places we haven't seen this go is into those hard choices. Who is going to divert? There is a transition underway, but who is going to divert activities to make that transition go further and faster? And to me, that's really, when I think about the term catalyst, it's finding those things that bring us to that desired destination in a more rapid time and in a way that gets us there without dangerously overshooting. And so to me, those are the places really where we need to be fixating our attention.
You touched there on the political headwinds briefly, but we are staring down the barrel of potentially some big political headwinds, possibly in the US. What do you think that means in terms of change makers, innovation, and cramping that catalyst solution?
Typical to pick on me as the American here. But there is a lot of political uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility. Think about the days of 2015, and if you want even 2019, those feel halcyon. If you're pre-pandemic, pre-invasion of Ukraine, pre-conflict in the Middle East, pre-galloping inflation, all of these things. So we realize our short-term futures are a lot more volatile and variable. And I think we're gonna have to understand that that is the future we inhabit. The challenge is we can either not act and be tossed about by that volatility, or we can understand that we will have to be open to that, but also act. And so on these political headwinds, yes, it is a real unfortunate reality, not just of the international system, but of all human systems, that a small number of bad actors can greatly disorder and upset a large consensus. the vast majority of the American population, the vast majority of the global population wants and needs climate action. And so intransigence, deliberate backsliding, these are all things that we really don't have the time for, nor do we have any popular mandate behind. And yet they are ones we have to contemplate. And I think part of the goal here is to really see this not though as a political objective, not though as a reputational commitment, but really as a strategic one. At a certain point, we're up against something that is far more inextricable, far more unstoppable than any political momentum, than any news cycle. And those are just simply the laws of physics. If you want the simple truth of it, we're adding energy to a system. And when you add energy to a system, it heats up. And that is something that no amount of spin, no amount of fake news, no amount of discussion is going to change. And I think we need to be very cognizant of the fact that what we do is going to have echoes in how that ultimately plays out for us, for our children, for our children's children. And the political winds are ones that are fickle. They blow in each direction. And so we need strategies that are resilient, not just to climate, but also to those political winds.
James, you wanted to
I
come
just
in on
wanted
that?
to come in because, so in fact, when Jaideep and I first met, it was around 10 years ago, and I was just doing a bit of long-term strategy work for a positive impact bank, Triodos, who's here tonight. And we looked at the scenarios about some of these headwinds. And what's interesting, though, in that scenario is the reaction, because although there's less support and there's less clarity, and it can be quite challenging in all sorts of ways, for innovators, it's incredibly galvanizing. You know what you're up against, and you choose to go up against it. And if you look at what's happened in some of the different markets now, you see that there is a political headwind towards transition, but the underlying economics, so the underlying economics of solar against fossil fuels, which has been driven by innovators and people pushing against them, that's now unstoppable because it no longer needs political support. It doesn't need propping up. It's in fact, if anything, it's actually steamrolling the sort of the last vestiges of political kind of inertia. And I think that that's really kind of powerful, and it's why all of these kind of, the whole ecosystem of innovation is going to be of critical importance as we do face huge global uncertainty, volatility, and pushback.
You can see why he's the catalyst. But I'm going to be devil's advocate here, James, and say, what are the roadblocks, though, to collaboration between innovators and finance that you are seeing?
Yeah,
and how can they be overcome?
Sure. I mean, as Jaideep says, I mean, banks, they become experts in things, they're experts in the familiar. Banks don't take upside sharing, they're trying to avoid losing money on loans, by and large. And therefore, there is a risk aversion. And in terms of, if you're looking at a cost-benefit analysis, which people might say is, you know, a sensible thing to do, well, it's really difficult if the costs are known because they come from the past and your current present reality. But a lot of the benefits are uncertain, they're unproved. They're actually things which are being demonstrated to new stakeholders who are just figuring out, oh, I suppose I should be contributing to this. And you see this in some of the models for nature-based solutions. Clean water, clean air, natural flood management, more biodiversity, all of these kind of benefits are real, and there needs to be contributions to be able to make the business work, but it's the realm of the unfamiliar. And I think that the sort of the intervention is partly finding some of these really novel innovations, and there's plenty here, but it's also about creating the spaces.
Yep.
That's where the network comes in, but there's GFI, there's other organizations creating these spaces to allow bankers to come into the very unfamiliar, slightly uncomfortable space. We can't rely upon our expertise. We have to be able to take these steps, employ what I would call obsessive curiosity about how could this possibly work, and recognize that bankability is not something which comes down from the heavens on a tablet of stone. It's something which is informed by judgments that real people make every day. And that's as true for bankers as with anyone.
Jaideep, tell me how frugal innovation feeds into this jugaad, because this was new to me.
So I've spent my career studying innovation, and in the first part of my career, I studied innovation as it was done in large Western corporations, because the understanding was that's where innovation happens. And then in about 2008 or so, I turned my attention to emerging economies like India, where I'd grown up. And when I went to study how innovation was done there, I was struck by how the approach was very different from the Western corporate counterparts. First of all, the innovators that were very frugal, they were very good at doing more with less, partly because they faced serious resource constraints. Secondly, the mindset was very flexible. The approach was very flexible. So they may have a plan, but they're good at moving from one plan to another, partly because the environment is fast changing and volatile. And third, their solutions seemed inclusive, designed to bring people who are outside the formal economy into the formal economy, because there are many such people. And so I began to look at this more, and not just in India, but at other emerging markets where you see similar kinds of approaches. And in fact, various emerging markets have their own term to describe this. In India, when we spoke to people who did this kind of frugal, flexible innovation and asked them how they would describe it, they often use this Hindi word jugaad, which roughly translates into frugal, affordable, but also flexible innovation. So that's how I came to this term. And initially I researched and wrote about how it was happening in emerging economies, where you need to be frugal because there are huge constraints on resources, and where the vast majority of the population is on relatively lower incomes. So you make your money not from your margins, which are often wafer thin, but from your volume. Unlike in more affluent societies where you might make your money from margins even though your volumes are smaller. So that was the initial thing, looking at emerging economies and how Western companies in those emerging markets were having to learn how to do this there. Because typically in the West, they would have much more structured, formal ways of doing innovation, and they would charge for it. So they had to learn how to do this. But after we published that book, which was in 2012, and I think that's what I was talking about at the Meaning Conference when we met, we realized there was a lot of interest in this idea of frugal innovation, or innovating faster, better, and cheaper in the West, for the West, where these big corporations were now taking on startups in the West who were very good at doing this, because there's this whole revolution of the lean startup, where basically these de novo organizations can kind of bootstrap themselves, create a solution with the customer faster, better, and cheaper, and then scale very rapidly, particularly if it's digital. And so in their own backyard in the West, they were being challenged by these startups to think and act frugally. So that's how I've ended up now thinking about frugal innovation in a global context, and the challenge to large organizations in these traditional sectors like banking. How can they do that traditional sort of structured innovation, but also do this faster, better, cheaper kind of innovation?
I want to open up to questions from the audience in a moment, and Aaron is going to pass around the mic. But before that, Emma, in terms of that innovating faster, better, cheaper, and the work that you're seeing with banks, is that something that you're seeing happening? Does it translate into the GFI world?
So I think something that James mentioned was really sort of struck home, which is, banks are driven by quarterly profits and quarterly reporting. So what we try and do at the GFI is, we don't have those constraints. We can think outside the box, and we can try and do the innovation and then slot it in to where the banks will like it. And actually what you were just saying, Jaideep, really struck home as well, because I used to work at one of the big banks, and we decided we wanted to innovate a green mortgage. It was a word, it wasn't a product at the time, and we thought, yes, let's do this. And we did it side of desk, and we did it with no budget. I think we managed to wrangle out about £500 to do a little bit of work, and we launched because I know Ecology have been doing this for a long time, but we managed to launch one of the first green mortgages within 9 months, because actually we put passion behind it, and we thought a bit differently. And if we came up against a blocker, well, we went around it. We acted more like water moving around a stone rather than a pebble bashing into that stone again. So I think with the right environment where people are enabled, people are allowed to innovate, people can make mistakes, and if you come up against a blocker, that's not the end of the journey. You can go back and start.
Or the end of your job.
Or the end of your job, precisely. So that right conditions, the right situation is really important, and we are starting to see banks, lenders, financial institutions, big institutional investors thinking like that. But hopefully, actually, the examples that have come out of the competition will open their eyes to what more could actually be possible.
Great, thank you. Questions from the audience and any virtual ones? Great. The lady here.
Hi everyone, thank
From
you.
Triodos.
Yes,
And if you
from
could say your
Triodos.
name and your company, please.
Hi, yes, so Amy Robinson from Triodos, thanks for the name check, James. So I guess my question is thinking about actually what you were talking about nature-based solutions and the fact that what we can get from them is a multiple set of benefits. Banks, obviously, historically, success is profit. One simple measure of success, how much money can you make? How could we reframe that around the other measures of success? You know, we're now looking at different impact measurements, biodiversity net gain, social impacts. I just would be really interested to get some thoughts on how we can try and make a more systems thinking approach to define what success looks like for banks.
Jody?
Happy to answer that question. I've spent a few years now studying this idea of corporate purpose, where companies, including large listed companies, are really thinking hard about, and I think this started post-financial crisis in particular. Companies were starting to really think hard about what was their social and economic and environmental purpose beyond returning profits to shareholders. Of course, that remains important, but what else? And of course, we also have the whole ESG movement, and where it's required for companies now to report on these things, sometimes legally, sometimes from pressure put on them by their investors. So a key part of that is if you're going to say your purpose is not just to keep your shareholders happy, but also to preserve the environment or to ensure fairness, social justice, whatever it is, you're going to have to measure and be independently, in a sense, audited for that and be able to be transparent about it. So the metrics become key, but it becomes very complicated very quickly. And that expertise may not reside in the private sector. It may not reside in companies. It may reside in other kinds of organizations, NGOs, in government organizations. Just sitting behind you is someone from BRAC. You might want to look at how BRAC has thought about measuring their impact and holding themselves accountable to often their donors who are big aid agencies. So I think that metric point you're raising is really important. And yes, it gets very complicated, but there are some remarkable organizations around the world that can help us to understand how to do that. Particularly the world of development, I think, can help a lot.
Do you want to come in?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say, because I think systems thinking really is critical, and sometimes I'll term this ecosystem thinking, and it's really the notion that we can't evaluate different bilateral relationships without taking into context the entire system itself. That if we say, is that an effective tactic? Well, it really depends on how it's moving the conversation, how it's shifting what is considered reasonable, that Overton window. One of the things that I think about with systems changes is trying to think about this a bit almost from the engineering standpoint of there's certain minimum thresholds that we all agree with. And the nice thing is I think we've been in this world for quite a long time, even before ESG, but really when we started to care about human rights, when we started to recognize that globalization wasn't all just more cheap things showing up on our doorstep, but also had real costs in terms of child labor, in terms of deforestation. And I think one of the key things is rather than trying to solve for every problem at once in a way that is going to optimize everything, which really isn't feasible and maybe in a bit of a controversial point, I don't really believe is the point of every company. Every company needn't be focused on being the top, being the most environmentally conscious on climate, on nature, the most restorative, the most, but we do, I think, all get around this point of minimum thresholds. And we do when it comes to physical and biological systems, we say below this point, this is not sustainable anymore. That could be a fishery that drops below a certain number of breeding individuals. It could be a city that drops below a certain population density. But in our world, when it comes to financial institutions, I think it really is about using from each of those areas of the system a view on minimum standards. What is utterly unacceptable and what will guide our paths? Because if we want to set, for example, a net zero target, what are the unacceptable consequences of e-waste? What are the unacceptable consequences of biodiversity loss and deforestation that comes from biofuels? Well, those are the pieces where if we try to solve for everything, I think we get into this analysis paralysis. So to me, it really is a little bit of a throwback, but this mentality that we really do need to agree on where the floor is before we start doing things and before we start turning on those blinders that leave us thinking, hey, we've solved the problem, when in fact, when we turn to the side, we realize that the other problem that we've just created is right there waiting for us.
Thank you. One more question, because I want to get to the awards. Yes, this gentleman. Oh.
So I've got the mic, so I'll just ask a question.
You've got the mic.
My
Go
name's
for it.
Hamish Stewart, and I'm a consultant.
I'm sorry, we can't. Sorry.
My name is Hamish Stewart, and I'm a consultant working in sustainable finance. So we've often heard about wartime analogies, and John Kerry's mentioned climate change. You know, it's like a war; we have to do battle with it. What would it look like if banks took that seriously? And I think to David's comment, we can see now in the Middle East and Russia what a wartime economy mobilization looks like. So what would it take for the banks to take that analogy and mobilize themselves in the UK on climate change in a manner that would be, warlike? Thanks.
Jody?
So again, I've looked at this issue of a culture of innovation and how particularly large organizations have become quite inertial. How do they pull themselves out of that inertia? And one way they can do that and try to innovate faster, better, and cheaper is by creating a so-called burning platform. Now, the leadership has to play a very important role there, and they create the conditions. They might have a vision which they communicate. They might set up very big, hairy goals for the organization and make it time-bound. And many may have heard in the audience when Paul Pullman became CEO of Unilever, he did something like that. They created the Sustainable Living Plan, and there was this 10-year kind of target that they were going to double their sales but halve their footprint. And there are other companies like that, Tarkett, which is a French flooring company. They make floors for office buildings and so on. They had something similar, a 10-year target of becoming a fully circular enterprise. And of course, it's not just enough to then set that target and talk about it almost relentlessly, internally and externally, but you've also got to create conditions that enable people then to innovate solutions to that challenge. Right across the board. If you are a FMCG, then you have to think about everything from where you're getting your food materials, how is it grown, are those practices sustainable? You've got to work with farmers. You've got to think about where your factories are, how is material being moved from place to place, what's your packaging like, and so on. You also got to think about how consumers are consuming your product in the home. So, it sets a challenge and a goal, but then you also have to create the enabling conditions within the organization to be able to respond.
There's also a habit in banking, which is that banks tend to be the last piece of the jigsaw. If you're the banker, you can say, well, is this in place? Is that in place? Come back when it is. And in the urgency that you speak of, that's not enough. It doesn't work. It's not the case that the banks can solve everything, but you have to be able to mobilize everything all at once in terms of your convening power, in terms of your influence. In the transition plan task force was about the engagement strategies. That's going to be even more important because you can't wait for the solutions to just arrive in the inbox fully formed and you just plug something in. It's nice when that happens, for sure, but it's going to take more. It's going to take more pushing. The more that the finance is signaling its readiness, that also, like David said, that plays a role in the ecosystem in terms of driving demand. Entrepreneurs aren't going to be so encouraged if they don't think that the finance is going to meet at the other side. So it's being able to take that more proactive stance, and also through different associations and networks to be able to collaborate to make sure that it's it's across the entire industry, not just one thing for a promotion for a month or so.
Emma.
And actually, on the point around demand, we do see the banks move quickly to innovate. 2 examples. One was the pandemic, where they moved very quickly to bring out the business interruption loans, etc. And that was because of the burning platform and the absolute need to have to do that. And the other time they move quickly is when there are returns to be made. So, let's have a look at sustainability-linked loans. That grew incredibly quickly as a market, and it took a while for the banks to be convinced, but then they moved in. So really it does come down to those enabling conditions, because I think the other piece to always bear in mind is finance will not drive people to do green projects. Finance is the enabler of the green projects. So you need all of those enabling conditions, the right policy, the right demand from the market, the right supply chain and skills, and the sort of, the green economic growth opportunities that come from that. The finance just needs to be ready and in place, so it's not a bottleneck or a blocker when all of those conditions do line up.
Thank you very much. And I know there are a number of questions that are still wanting to be asked. I would urge you to ask those during networking upstairs, because the moment has arrived for the awards. So please take your seats back in the audience. Thank you all very much. Please, a round of applause. Right, the moment you've all been waiting for. Yeah, don't worry, I won't nick your script. So as this has been a global contest, we have finalists attending virtually, and we hope if Adam and Gavin at the back make the tech work, which they did earlier, that they might be able to join us when we announce the winners. So go on, over to you. You're allowed the script back.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So, without further ado, the first category that we have here is our Go Faster category. And in this category, we're looking to recognize solutions that support an accelerated transition for banks and financial institutions with their existing clients. And so, the finalists are, we should have like music and like drum beat or something. First is Tilt, climate data for SMEs, small to medium enterprises, with Thea Finance Labs. The focus of Tilt aims to provide banks with data and tools to assess the sustainability of small and medium enterprises. There's a scarcity of climate and sustainability data for SMEs, and the solution Tilt offers is an open source software that's generating sustainability profiles for SMEs, enabling banks to support their transition and manage climate risks, specifically applied to companies in transition, offering incentivized loan structures to meet transition goals. And the second finalist for the Go Faster category is Turnkey Climate Lending for Banks with ATMOS Financial. ATMOS is focused on making climate positive solutions like solar and electric vehicle adoption more accessible for communities by crowding in community lenders. This is important as it continues to be difficult for community banks, smaller banks, to offer competitive climate-focused loans. And ATMOS Financial offers turnkey software that connects community lenders and vetted installers, offering lower cost financing for climate positive activities. And the judges remarked on this one, this entry, on how this innovation is useful for countries with less developed capital markets, as well as its replicability and scalability elsewhere around the world. The last of the finalists and third of the finalists is the end-to-end project finance software for sustainable infrastructure portfolios. I recognize all of these titles are a mouthful, but they are complex. These are really innovative and complex projects. But this is with Banyan Infrastructure. Banyan is focused on amplifying and accelerating financing for sustainable infrastructure projects. Challenge here: it's time-consuming. Manual project finance processes are hindering investment and adding cost and delays that are unnecessary. And the solution provided Banyan Infrastructure offers a specialized project finance software platform, automating complex tasks, increasing deal velocity, and reducing costs for financing sustainable infrastructure projects. And Banyan's proposal alleviates capacity constraints, enables faster deal flows, and the tracking and management of existing investment. It would also reduce friction and fragmentation. And I want to point out that as we discussed with our judges, because of such a complex and set of proposals and so many, we have finalists in each category. These 3 finalists in each category, but we have so many ideas that we want to work with. But I need now to announce the winner for our Go Faster category. And it is ATMOS Financial with Robbie Anderson. Robbie.
It's really weird to see myself on the screen. Can you hear me?
You're on the screen and we can hear you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great honor. There's a big feedback loop. Yeah, my co-founder and I have been working hard at this for 5 years, and it's really starting to take off and have impact. Our loan customers are seeing a 30% cost decline versus our competition to go for rooftop solar. And now we're adding in additional asset classes. And then once we are firmly established in the US, we plan to repeat this model globally, because community banks, credit unions have the same problem the world over, as do borrowers, as do the distribution channels and installers that do the work. And so our software connects the 3 together to allow the cheapest capital that's available, the mortgages, the community bank capital, to get into the hands of the borrowers. So thank you again for this great honor. And I believe we're also working with the fellowship to drive this forward. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
And now for our second category, James, you get the honor.
So our next category is Go Further. So this is interventions that enable the flows of finance for new and emerging climate solutions. Again, we'll highlight the 3 finalists. So the first of these is energy rights developments from EPR Squared. And this addresses a challenge of the limitations that existing sustainable finance options around which hinders the adoption of clean technology solutions like commercial solar on real estate. Often the benefits of these installations are too long-term for many property owners and accrue to the building users the classic principal agent problem. Their solution is energy rights development, a common law legal innovation based on real estate sector approaches, facilitating clean energy development by separating out the energy rights from land and property. So the clean projects are 100% funded by EPR Squared. The owner is separated from the capital and maintenance and technology risks, meaning that there's benefits which accrue to both the property owner and the users, better loan terms, positive impact on value at risk, long-term payment agreements, and solving that principal agent dilemma can potentially unlock a $15 trillion clean tech industry globally. The judges commented that they like the immediate application can really address a broad need and how it can build markets through securities to drive scale, and how it's poised to operationalize and internationalize. Second of the finalists is regenerative lending integrating natural capital value by symbiosis. And here, as was mentioned earlier, the challenge is that nature's co-benefits are generally unpriced and not integrated into financial decision making. And that's leading to underinvestment in nature-based solutions despite their huge potential for climate change mitigation and financial value. Symbiosis Solution is a web-based app which provides geospatial data on the monetary value of ecosystem services and is able to link the climate-related financial risks and benefits, enabling nature-based valuations. It connects borrowers with nature-based projects, introducing a new lending market focused on ecological restoration, and has the potential to bridge nature regeneration financing gaps by internalizing this value of natural capital. Judges again commented that if these ambitions were to be met, the positive impact could be profound. The third and final of the finalists is the top-up finance carbon credits for heat pumps, although it could be also used for other technology solutions, as many others are in this category. The challenge that was specifically identified here is the high upfront costs and limited financial support, which is holding back the widespread adoption of heat pumps, stalling the progress of electrification in buildings, in particular for the majority of lower and middle income householders. So the solution is a novel approach using an affordability analysis at a householder level to identify the exact financial top-up needed for that individual building owner to make a heat pump installation financially feasible, linking that additional payments and the associated additionality of climate action to the carbon credits market. With the impact that you can have faster building electrification rates, significant emissions reduction, and a just transition, especially for those low to middle income householders. Again, judges really like that this could have massive impact if realized at scale, and again, also tie in social justice. And reaching down the envelope, should dim the lights. The winner is Energy Rights Development, EPR squared. Get over the fact that technology works. It's like I'm pinching myself. I'm here, you're here. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I can't thank you all enough for the consideration and for the award. Our team has been working on this for about a decade in California, and we're really excited about creating a new real estate asset class for clean tech that allows microgrid development, virtual power plants, and really generating behind the meter using solar, batteries, and any other new technology in the future. So thank you all, and hopefully this helps make financing of these projects much easier.
Congratulations again. And for the final third category, I'll welcome Naomi.
Final category, Go Fairer. As a reporter for many years around equity and social justice, this is a category that's particularly key to me. So these are solutions that embed social justice for all. We know that in a changing climate, there's a need to accelerate financial institutions' contributions to a just transition. And so the finalists are the Precovery Resilience and Equity Finance Assessment, brought to you by Precovery Labs. So this is a holistic project financing assessment that considers resilience and equity issues alongside risk mitigation. Now, we know that historically there's been a gap in the assessment of resilience issues by banks. There has been a lack of holistic design, inconsistent definitions. It's been tough to connect projects to funding. So understanding resilience can be especially important considering finance for new developments so that these insights can be designed in at the beginning. Precovery Labs is a beta-tested tool trailed by a number of CDFIs in the US already, which have evaluated projects on their return on resilience value and can cascade benefits to vulnerable communities. Absolutely key. Financial institutions using the tool have already interacted with property developers who have gone on to incorporate sustainability and resilient design principles into their approach. And the judges liked how the tool can be used in sectors other than finance, so it could be globally scalable. Next, an inclusive carbon finance platform, Nobon. This aims to simplify carbon project developments in Africa, in particular for the benefit of local communities. It offers a solution with a clean, digital, lean platform to connect project developers with financing options, increasing efficiency and cutting out a lot of the intermediation, which often obviously extracts a lot of the value, often leaving communities with less than 10% of the value that they're actually creating. The benefits are an increase in the share of carbon credit investments that then go to local communities, and the judges appreciated the distinctive feature of disintermediation, which would ensure a fairer share of benefits to smallholders and other providers. It also has the potential to make the carbon offset market more efficient and is already operational. And financing assistance to unlock clean vehicle access for lower income families via the Community Housing Development Corporation. This organisation is providing financial assistance for low-income residents to purchase clean electric vehicles. It's offering financial coaching and loans at an affordable fixed rate, and it's combining various grant programs and partnerships with manufacturers and local CDFIs to provide this blended finance package with consumer education for communities. The ambition is to aim to eliminate predatory lending practices and unlock the adoption of low carbon transport. And the judges thought this was a well-targeted and well-thought-out scheme that meets the needs of the identified audience. It could be shared and replicated. And the winner is, I have to click on and get the thing out there. The winner is Precovery Labs. Stuart, thank you. Where are you joining us from?
I have to say, I was not ready for this, and really appreciate the process. And having heard the first two categories and this one and the fellow finalists, it's really very humbling. And appreciate the comment about the global nature of it, and especially because we know that we can't do this if we don't do it equitably, and that continues to be the problem. And it's how we started, and it's how we got in the position we're in. So I hope that some of us could actually partner, because I hear some things that really overlap and might give us a chance to do some things in different parts of the world and bring these tools together. So I really had nothing prepared to say, and I'm completely shocked. So I guess the Catalyst Oscar speech thing is a lesson for everyone. Have it ready. Thanks, everybody.
For the next Oscars. Thank you very much. Right, over to James.
Congratulations again to all of our winners. You did it. We did it. Yay. We're getting to the end. Only really not the end at all. It's just the beginning. This is where the real fun starts for us and hopefully for all of you. We want to really catalyze the connections between these great ideas and banks and lending institutions. We're really excited to be working with the British Business Bank. For other bankers who are in the room who want to connect to some of these ideas and to the network and being able to create the spaces to be able to bring that together, we want to speak to you. For accelerators and other programs like Green Finance Institute and others around the world online, we want to connect with you to be able to multiply those spaces. For any of you who have ideas, we want to understand what connections you may have been triggered by. The best way to stimulate your own ideas is to just hear other people's, and you've been hearing lots of ideas. So we want to grab those today. In terms of what happens next, we've offered you some food for thought. We are going to now offer you some real food. And our team, this is the first time that our team has actually met each other in person today. And we're all here today in person. We're really, really excited to meet you. We want to also for you to meet with one another. And we'd love to kind of just continue that conversation upstairs. We would love to collect any ideas you have or any questions that you have. It's an amazing group. We are so privileged to host you tonight. Thank you to everybody online. We aren't able to download the food and drink to you, but I'm sure there'll be an AI solution for that in time. Thank you again. Thank you to all the partners. Thank you to the judges. Thank you to the many participants and entrants, even those who were not featured today. There is so much talent and potential that we see. Thank you very much. And we will now process upstairs for some networking.